Welcome to week 2, the principles of design. Let's take a minute and review week 1, the visual elements. Last week you talked about line, shape, mass, space, time and motion, light, color, and texture. As you can see in the work to the right by M.C. Escher, you will not always find the visual elements in every artwork, but you will find some. And this one, positive and negative space, line, value, immediately jump out to us. The visual elements that we just reviewed are the tools for production and analysis of art. Now, how do we put these two together? Well, the principles of design are the rules we use that tell us how to put the tools together, and that's how we create a composition. When we talk about two-dimensional art, we talk about composition. When we talk about three-dimensional art, or in general, we use the term design. Our first principle of design is unity and variety. Here we'll look at The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. You'll notice in this PowerPoint that I'll use some of the pictures from Chapter 3 and some of the pictures from Chapter 4 and some that we haven't talked about. You'll also see that I'll use a piece of artwork that might have been with a different principle in the book, so you can see how to relate these to other pieces. Unity is a sense of oneness. With this painting, Van Gogh has used the same technique when applying brushstrokes, these short, curving lines. He also uses a very thick paint, so if you were to look at this, you would be able to see that the texture is uniform throughout the piece. Now, as far as variety goes, he uses a variety of shapes. Like we see large shapes of the cypress tree at the front to the left, and we see the large moon, but the village is small. We also see his use of organic and geometric shapes. It adds variety to this piece. When we're looking at balance in a work of art, we're going to look at symmetrical and asymmetrical balance. The piece to the right, George O'Keeffe's Cow Skull Red, White, and Blue, is an example of symmetrical balance. We can draw a line of symmetry straight down the middle, and we see the same things on the right as we do on the left. With asymmetrical balance, you may have one large image on the left balanced by a few small images on the right. Damien Hirst is a contemporary artist who is a master of radial balance, and you can check out his kaleidoscope paintings in the link below. You'll notice that he uses actual butterflies in his paintings. I think you'll enjoy them. Emphasis and subordination is our next principle. This is Happy Accidents of the Swing by Fragonard. The term focal point is what we first look at. You may see something different than someone else that's looking at it, but sometimes it's pretty obvious. Here, our figure is in the middle, and also she is wearing warm colors compared to the cool colors she's surrounded by. Also, you learned in week 1 that red and green are complementary colors, and that pink is just simply a tint of red when you add white to a color. So she stands out. There's also the use of atmospheric perspective. There's more detail in the front of the picture, and in the back you'll see the colors are duller and there's not as much detail placed on those. So our subordination are those areas of less interest that we see in the back. And there are several factors. We're going to talk about directional forces in the next slide, but the directional forces bring our eye in and move our eye around. And the ropes here serve as directional forces. Also, her suitor pointing up to her serves as a directional force, and then the light shining on her is a third. Now, in this interior of a Dutch house, we see several other things. We see pattern. We see the repetition of the square that kind of gives a unity to this piece. We see the use of colors contrasting. But how does this move our eye around? You may notice this figure to the right is smaller and stands alone. This is an example of asymmetrical balance, where we have one figure alone balanced by several figures connected together. But what draws our attention to this figure? If you notice at the bottom, the shadows create a nice diagonal line that bring our attention to this figure. And then the windows shine another light straight onto her. So it's almost as if there's this arrow pointing our attention to her. Contrast. This is a simple still life by Paul Cézanne, but there are several things, visual elements that are contrasting in this picture. For one thing, when we look at colors, we have red and green, and then yellow and violet, those complementary colors, those opposites on the color wheel. We also have organic and geometric shapes, which provide a contrast, and we can imagine the contrast in texture there between, say, the apples and the lemons, and then the light of the background and the dark of the table. So anytime we have dissimilar elements placed next to each other, we say that that piece has contrast. Repetition and rhythm. We saw repetition in the interior of the Dutch house with the patterns in the floor and in the ceiling and in the windows. Here with Jacob Lawrence uses flat shapes, and so these are kind of easy to determine. He repeats the seats here, he repeats the windows, he repeats the colors throughout, and that provides a unity. But we see the rhythm when it moves in a sequence. If you look at the window shades here, you can see that they move down and up in kind of this wave pattern. Now, this is a painting of a scene on a train, and we can imagine that movement of the train as we see those window seats moving throughout. Scale and proportion. And this is Michelangelo's Pietà, and when you first look at this, you might not see anything unusual. The scale is the size relationship of one thing to another, and we have this nice triangular composition or design. The proportion is the size relationships to the whole. And when you're looking at the proportions of the human figure, the average adult is 7.5 heads tall, and there are 2 heads in between the shoulders. But if you look closely, if you look at Mary, and she has Christ in her lap, if she stood up, she would be huge. But you don't notice that right away. So the artist manipulates the scale in order to make the design more appealing, to have that triangular composition. Assignments for this week. Now that you have the visual elements and the principles of design, you're ready to create your own analysis of a work of art. And what I would suggest you do is just take a piece of notebook paper, write down, just list the elements and the principles. You're going to choose a piece of artwork to write about. Do not choose one from chapters 3 or 4. Because the book already kind of gives you that information on those. Choose a piece of artwork that you like. I want you to enjoy this project, and I want you to enjoy this course. Remember, I want you to start thinking critically so you can apply these skills to other things. Don't make it too difficult. Should not be more than 750 words. You can type it straight in. I recommend typing it in a Word document, uploading it, or even cutting and pasting it and put it in the assignment sections of the course. Your next assignment will be to find some examples of the principles. You're going to choose 3 principles, any ones you want, and then you're going to find 3 examples of each. And the piece to the right is just a piece of artwork that one of my children brought home, but it's a perfect example of radial balance. So I just put it on the floor, took a picture of it, and that's the type of thing you can upload. You can take the pictures yourselves, or you can find them on the internet. That's up to you. But you're just going to put all of those, once again, you put them in a document, upload the document, or you can just cut and paste them straight onto the assignments. I hope you enjoy the assignments this week. Make sure you participate in the forum as well. That's the end. Have a great week.